Well, there's nothing better than being up on the farm, especially by yourself. Um, and as you look around, you can see that it has something it's going to give you. You know, you take care of it, and it's going to give something back to you.
When I grew up here in Waikapū, adjacent to Noho'ana, and hearing stories about how our ʻohana not only grew kalo, but made poi that would feed this ʻohana in particular, but the greater, community of Waikapū, really was part of the inspiration for us to begin the restoration and bringing life back to this place of Noho'ana, which means, simply a way of life or living or lifestyle. And our early mission was Iola mau ka mo'ohaloa, right? Which was really ensuring that the genealogy and the practices of cultivating our ancestral crop, that is tied to our mo'opuaha genealogy, it really is at the forefront. But that evolved over time to perpetuating traditional practices, to ʻike ku'una tied to to mahiʻai, and so it then became ʻeola mau ka mahiʻai ku'una, and putting the culture back into agriculture.
We're trying to bring back the Kalo and the lifestyle of the Hawaiian people, as well as educate children. Try to let them leave with some understanding that food comes someplace other than from a grocery store. It does come from the land, and we have to take care of the land, and it will, and the water, and it will give back to us.
I always laugh because I think when we first got started, in 2004 with the restoration, and realizing how disconnected these keiki, at that time were with ʻāina, realized that, we need to build an army of mahiʻai, and farmers, people that understood their connection to food, how to get their hands dirty, how to not just only feed themselves and their ʻohana, but feed the greater community.
So passing that along is very, very important. And in some way, if I can do that, our family can do that, our ʻohana, then when we go, we're leaving something behind that they can also pass on to their children. I think that's what's the most important. When we started 6 years ago, this place was a forest. The Hawaiians had left the land around the early 1930s. And the reason, of course, was they didn't have any water. So you're seeing just a few Loʻi in Waikapū, where probably in 1850 there were 1,800 of them, from the ocean going up to the mountains.
Noho'ana wasn't necessarily isolated or like how it is today, kind of a kipuka in the middle, or of an oasis in the middle of suburbia, but really was part of a larger, much more extensive kalo growing agricultural complex. How Noho'ana, didn't fall to the wayside or fall into the hands of the sugar industry is always baffles me.
It was hard work, and I know that my cousin William was here the first day when over 100 people joined the families and said, we're going to work together and find out where the source of the water was from the awai down back to the stream.
One of the unique things about that project was that with Onipaʻana Hui, we often took a gang of people from one island to the other to help open up, and got local people as much as we could, but there were so many people who wanted to participate. They would come along too. They from the Big Island, they go, "Oh, you guys doing a project on Kauai? We're coming," you know. So we had as much as 400 people on this project. But in this case, the Pellegrinos and their neighbors organized the whole thing with labor from mostly from there, from Waikapū. And so there was a vested interest from everybody in that valley to see this project work. And that was a really strong thing to do. So when we came, we were just coming along as, you know, to talk and say, here's how we can organize a little bit. But we didn't provide the labor at all, you know. We just went in and provided a little bit of advice. And that's one of the reasons that place is so strong and still going. I think is that whole community saw the value of it. And
that's a testament to Waiāhole.
Yeah, really. Recognized that they needed to fight for water and those things.
Yeah.
Being connected to all his neighbors.
My husband and I were very happy to be able to come home, and we were once again blessed with the opportunity to live here in Waikapū. So it was like coming home, except that for us, and I don't know, William, maybe that was true for you, we couldn't figure out where the taro patches went. They were totally overgrown because nobody had farmed, for a long time.
So I came in and just kind of went through all the brush and take a look at the area, but just overgrown with probably chest-high grass.
Yeah, I remember that, when we started to, clear and everything. And then we were going to all work together to find out the lay of the land and where the taro patches were actually before.
We're using our machetes and little craftsman chainsaw, trying to cut a path into Noho'ana to figure out where anything even was, because you couldn't see anything in here, and we were literally crawling through tunnels of how.
It was bushes. I remember it was overgrown,
Just overgrown.
and it was fairly, a nice slope to it, right? It wasn't a real flat piece of land, but they were visible on walls, I think, in disrepair, and you could see where the river came, a how tree was growing all along the river, but it wasn't hard to look at it and just kind of squint a little bit and see the taro patches. It was, fairly self-explanatory. It wasn't a complicated thing, The engineering, generally in these cases where we go help people open up Loʻi, the engineering has been done hundreds of years ago. And it's just a matter of looking at it with the right eye and saying, oh yeah, I can see how they did it. Most of the water has been taken. 95% of all rivers were taken by sugar. And so every place that people want to start up and grow taro again tends to be a place that is marginally good taro land because the water's been taken. If you've got water, you can grow taro pretty much anywhere. There's no such thing as not good land, but you have to have that water.
Yeah. The thing is that the farm is next to a huge river. There's water. There's lots. You can hear it. There's plenty of water, but it's like 15 feet below the taro patches. Yeah. So that means you gotta go up pretty far.
It was like playing, the whole thing was like playing to see this all unfolding,
I think by the time we left on day 2, you could already see you could see
the taro growing.
Yeah,
you could see it coming up already.
You could see it looking beautiful with grass and all the things.
And you could walk through and you could see that there had been something there before.
Right, yeah.
What's really, really nice about the Hawaiian method of farming is that whatever they take, they return. And water is probably the most important thing that they took. Irrigate the land, allow crops to grow, and return it to the streams. And our water comes from Po'owai, from the Waikapū stream. Comes down an ancient ʻoai. It snakes down past 5 or 6 households. Comes in at the top of the farm. We use gravity feed, bring it all the way down through another ancient ʻoai here system into our Loʻi Kalo. And then we return it. There's a flume you'll see later. We return it to the stream. And that way people downstream can also catch the water, use it to farm, and return it to the stream. The interesting thing, however, is there are no more farms down there. There are probably only 5 or 6 of these Loʻi in all of Waikapū right now. But returning the water is probably the most satisfying part of the whole Hawaiian Loʻi Kalo cultivation. The fact that you use it, you take what you need from it, and you give it back. And that's just the way life should be too. And we're trying to bring back the Kalo and the lifestyle of the Hawaiian people, as well as educate children. We bring many, many children up to the farm. I think about 4,000 have come up already for education, what we call ʻāina-based education.
We have bunnies and dogs and chickens, pigs, and ducks. I think the pigs are fun because they know when we're coming to bring their food, and then they make a lot of noise, and I guess that makes me happy. I think Kalo is important because it can feed us, and when we work in the kitchen, then we can make poi.
The best part of is perpetuating the Hawaiian legacy, the fact that they grew food for many, many years, took care of themselves for many, many years. We're trying to pass all that along to the youngsters so that they understand that their food source is very important. It has to be pure, it has to be organic.
And we hope more young people will, consider looking at getting their hands in the soil, because we need that. Otherwise, we're going to continue to be unsustainable and have to depend on the ships that come in or the planes that fly our food in. It doesn't have to be like that,
It offers a connection to the past. If we lose it, then you lose who you are, you lose your identity. As long as the land exists, then we know who we are, where we came from.
In the last 3 years, we began to build and construct a physical space for preparing these value-added foods. From a Western standpoint, they're value-added products, but really finding ways to just be able to make poi, to make mahiʻai, to make ulu flour, and all things ulu and kalo, and getting that out into the community in every which way, so that this next generation, especially at the youngest of the age, from the first foods that they eat, like poi was the first food that we ate. That's not necessarily the practice anymore. So how do we get that palate ma'a, and then that restoring that ono for it from a young age that sustains itself throughout the rest of their life? I feel like that's a mission for many of us, kanaka, that are doing this practice. But for us, we decided that would really be a core component of our nu'ukia, of our mission and our vision here at Noho'ana Farm.
And I think we see it when the students come to visit and they're offered mahiʻai for the first time. Some are very hesitant to even try it for whatever reason, but mostly because they're not accustomed to it or know much about it. It's interesting to see how much texture, color, all of those things come into play because of what's happened to our food systems and where we get our food and what we're used to eating.
To be able to educate the next generation to understand that these farms can exist, and when we increase the appetite for kalo, for ulu, for these kinds of foods that we can grow more sustainably here in Hawaii, then we are actually like creating activists for the next generation who then have to have the charge of going back and changing these systems, right? Fighting back.
It's much bigger than just a farm growing some taro.
Right.
It's an example of how you achieve
It's a
something.
school, yeah.
It's a school.
And it's an example that other people could follow. You know, how do you work with your neighbors to become food producers and stuff like that? So I think him doing that is really important. I mean, you know, how many years is it? Is this 20?
20, yeah.
20 years. You know, that's a big deal. That's a long-term school.
And I think part of that education program, whether it's our mahiʻai, you know, bilingual ʻāina-based education program, or our hanaya maona, you know, food processing program, is that over the years, some of those keiki that, you know, came have now come back to us as adults, or, you know, becoming into adulthood and as high school interns, you know, as employees, and that really, I think, was telling for us, you know, and hoping that we're making some kind of positive impact here on Maui and our community, and within the educational system. It took us 3 years to build Manawaiulu, which is the name of our community food processing hub here at Noho'ana and Commercial Kitchen.
I could have never guessed when we first moved onto this property that we'd ever have a certified kitchen. I think what that shows is that it's a true testament to wanting this farm to sustain itself and to be a true working business. So from, you know, the beginning stages of planting to then having a value-added product, whatever it may be, or to your plate, is pretty amazing. I mean, it's a huge feat that I never thought we would have accomplished.
We opened on August 6th, 2023, and 2 days later, the Lahaina fires and Kula fires. And so, you know, it really was, I'd like to honor my father in that way, but it really was my father who was like, you know, pushed us to think about, okay, how can we stand up this space for other use, you know, other than what the intended purpose was for education, you know, milling poi and other things there, but how to activate this space as a, you know, as one of the many, you know, resiliency hubs, food hubs that evolved overnight. And so, you know, literally the next day after the fire, we started preparing meals out of the kitchen. And, you know, my father was a really big part of that because he understood how to cook at scale, you know, because we weren't just making 2 meals, we were making, you know, 100-something meals at a time. And so what we decided to do, you know, as ʻohana, Lahaina ʻohana started to, you know, find temporary housing, we decided that we would provide, you know, weekly farm-to-table meals for these ʻohana. And what we've learned through that process is you know, not only the ability to prepare large amounts of food, but the partnerships that we've had with, you know, over 20 different farmers and food producers and ranchers on Maui to incorporate what they're growing into the meals.
You know, when we were really trying to figure out how could we best help, we thought about how life-changing it was for so many reasons, but this idea of how healing that is to have like food produced on this ʻāina or on the island at least.
And poi is a major component of every meal. It doesn't matter if we're cooking Italian, they get poi. If they're cooking Japanese, they're getting poi. You know, this past week was panko crusted ono, poi. I don't think we questioned it. I think we just did, and we still do, and we you know, we love being able to feed people, and I think that has really shifted the use of that space. You know, and part of it was not only producing poi and pa'iai and ulu flower from Kalo and ulu that was grown here at Noho'ana, but Manawai Ulu was also going to be a place to support other Kalo farmers in which we were able to aggregate Kalo and purchase Kalo from other farmers to be able to mill poi and get that imported food source out into the community as well under, you know, Manawai Ulu, you know. And so, like, it's really been, I think, a blessing for us, but also a really important resource for the greater community, and really right now for the last year since we've opened the doors is for the ʻāina community. I remember, you know, sitting down by the river, you know, a few years later, you know, after we opened up, you know, 2 Loʻi and started planting and, you know, started getting a real chainsaw and having educational groups up here. I remember my father, you know, telling me, he's like, you know, one, I never thought I was going to be doing this, you know, after retiring from being a teacher, a kumu, but let alone that we would be implementing education, you know, really here on the ʻāina, and I think that was telling, just knowing that a small place like this, you know, a little 2¼ acre ʻāina kuleana at Waikapū has so far such an expansive reach.
When I retired 16 years ago from Maui Community College, I didn't quite know where I was going, for sure. And little by little, I realized that I became a farmer, and that my hands were in the soil, and I was liking it. Now, just thinking back, I wonder about the value of it all. It didn't really take me long to decide I am meaningful. I like the journey, and trying to think forward to project to see just how long I might be traveling and when the journey will end. Maybe in a minute, maybe in years. Regardless, I like the journey.